What's good? I'm Kinell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. Just letting you know with this little bit at the start that we now have a Patreon. Sub up to that and you can get all these episodes early and ad-free, so you won't even see this bit at the start. You get them a few days before the main episodes drop out. We've got some great guests coming up. We've got some studio episodes. We've got some Zoom episodes with some fantastic rappers talking about the films they love and the films that influenced them. We got a lot going on there. Plus, you get some bonus content like film reviews, all that kind of thing. I don't need to explain this to you. You know what a Patreon is. But yeah, it's patreon.com/Kinell Sinister Cinema. So check that out. Peace. Yes, people. What's good? I'm Kinell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. Kinell Sinister Cinema is brought to you by Forgotten Sons Apparel. Check them out at forgottensonsapparel.co.uk. Forgotten Sons Apparel is a York-based streetwear brand drawing inspiration from alternative culture, tattoos, film, classic TV and cartoons from our childhood. In our own words, if you like our stuff half as much as we do, then we like it twice as much as you. I'm a big fan of this brand and I love the guys who make it. They've supported me for years, way before I was podcasting. They supported me in my battle rap career. You might have seen me rocking some of their garms on Don't Flop and other leagues. I love Forgotten Sons Apparel and I'm urging you all to check them out at forgottensonsapparel.co.uk. Right, now on with the show. Hey, what's good? It is once again Kinell, Sinister Cinema, the KSC podcast, back at it. I'll be honest with you, I've been all over the fucking place lately for reasons that may or may not be connected to the fact the World Cup is on. So, offers in the boozers, you know how that goes. And on top of that, flipping Xbox Black Friday sale. It's been affecting my work rate. It's been affecting how organised I am. I have not been organised of late. But I am back on the case as we speak. Got a great guest for you, and I've got a few other ones lined up. I'm going to try and get a few stacked together, pre-recorded in advance of Christmas, because I'm just going to end up falling off the wagon again. Before I get fully into introducing our guest, I will say that I am back out gigging again. So if you are near the Merseyside area and you want to see me doing some rapping, you can catch me at Don't Flop on Beat vs. Acapella 2 in Birkenhead. It's going down from 4 p.m. Saturday, 17th of September at Outlaws Clubhouse in Birkenhead. I'm battling some pilot called Gas Time. Never seen him, but I understand everyone hates him. Unfortunately, I'm back in murder mode at the minute, so it's one of them. I haven't really been on it this year, but now I'm fully back. We've also got the great Boski taking on Raz Wren, who did a cracking job at the the Chester event. That's up on the Don't Flop Patreon now. We've also got we're basically bringing the Ronalds through. This is Ronald's takeover. We got GEE versus Carlton Shanks. And we got a couple of on-beat clashes for you. We've got Monroe, who I'm a very big fan of, versus Tricky, formerly Trickster. We got Dale C.A. versus Scaldy from Ireland. Love that guy. Great to see him over. And we've got T versus C Red. And I think we've also got a tryout from Falcon versus D-Side Lyrics. I think he might have battled once before in 2013, I believe. But that got lost to when the demo channel went down. And speaking of people I first discovered in 2013, I'm back on bringing battle rappers that I've been a big fan of that have moved on to other creative avenues since. Like this is someone I got a lot of love for. I'm going to bring him on right now. I first knew him as Two-Can, but he is now known as Tom Russell.
Hello.
Yes, how are we, la?
I am good, man. I am good. Apologies to everyone for the terrible camera quality as well. Unlike you, I'm not like a mad YouTube person, so I'm literally running on civilian hardware.
Hey, that's cool. Like, COVID gave us this, if nothing else. We can at least put something like this together. Yeah, man. So you good? How you been?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. It's interesting you bring up battle rap, actually, man, because I'm gradually through Twitter starting to re-follow it after being out of it for a couple of years. So it's nice to see how many names I recognise as well. It was a bit I was a bit gutted that, speaking of Boski, when I saw he didn't get picked in the draft.
Yeah.
I was a little bit gutted, man, because obviously he's from like my era of when I was doing it really actively, and I was like, oh no, Boski, like, but I did pop into Facebook and I saw he done his Facebook post when, you know, he took it really well and stuff like that, which is obviously, you know, good, because I know a lot of people weren't happy about the draft thing. It's crazy how much battle rap's changed though since I did it, because I say did it. I came back for I did 2 battles in 2020 just for a bit of a laugh with the Beast Anglia thing, but you know, like, so, you know, all like the fact there's all the leagues and stuff. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's all over the place, man, and it's quite fractured in some ways, but I think it's kind of like coming a bit back together a bit now, and fucking people are showing a bit of love, in separate directions, which is kind of what I like. I do kind of like the fact that Don't Flop kind of became the kind of the outsiders, like, because the thing is, like, you know, they say everyone is fighting a battle that you don't know about and all this kind of thing. And my battle that people don't know about is I am still fighting the Don't Flop versus King of the Ronalds Forum Rope Wars from 2015, 16, and 17. And I just want to say to all you wankers in Viewpoint who were saying, what should we call it? Flipping us Ronalds and never be welcome on Don't Flop. Fucking, we got GEE versus Carlton Shanks. We got Kinell. We got Boski. There isn't even going to be at the event. It's in Birkenhead. We just had Hulk and Boski and me versus GEE battling in a tattoo shop while we were getting tattoos. That's going to be dropping soon, and that video was fucking wild. It was a crazy day. That was.
I was always on like kind of Team Ronalds back in the day, man, because that's what battle rap was about to me. I mean, part of that was skill level, because I just did not have the presence to keep up with like some of the higher tier international stuff anyway. But it was, you know, like when things got too flashy, it just didn't feel fun. Do you get where I'm coming from with that? Whereas the Ronalds lot, it was like, no, primarily it has to be fun. Like, if we're not having fun doing it, there's no fucking point to any. Excuse me, am I allowed to swear? Can I swear?
Yeah, man.
Cracking. I was going to say, I did think I'd heard people swearing before, but then, you know, I didn't want to get you demonetized or nothing like that.
Fucking, I am not monetized, man. I don't fucking like, you know, as much as I'd like another little income stream, like flipping, I think they put like it once you get monetized, they start monitoring your shit and fucking like most of the episodes are Epstein jokes, and sometimes I just say anti-vax stuff that I don't even believe just because I think it's funny.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Then I'm glad that that's kind of we're on the same level with that. I mean, the reason I ask is I've worked with a lot of like YouTube narrators. I say I work with. They've narrated some of my stories, and I just have messages coming through like, oh, do you mind if I edit such and such out because I don't want to get the channel demonetized? And I mean, sometimes I have to be like, well, kind of, yeah, because it's a horror story, and you know what I mean. That's like an essential part of it. But yeah, so I worry, man. I do worry. Like I said, I'm not a YouTuber myself in terms of making content, so I always just like, oh no, I don't want to get him demonetized or or something.
What you call it? That's a nice little segue, because you're doing a few things at the minute, but since you've got a book out and you've got another one due to come out, let's talk about that a bit. Like, as I understand it, like, because like you haven't really just gone straight into novel writing. Like, it kind of like evolved out of like this whole sort of creepypasta sort of culture, didn't it? With you.
Well, the story behind it. So for years, for the people that don't know, on Reddit, there's a forum called NoSleep, a subreddit called NoSleep. I don't use Reddit that much, but I knew of NoSleep because I listen to a lot of the narrations on YouTube and have done for years, you know, just in the background and stuff like that while I'm working or whatever. And during 2021, so last year, my wife was pregnant. It was quite a difficult pregnancy as well, like not like sort of life or death situation, but because of all the post-COVID restrictions, she was going like in and out of hospital a lot, and it was all very stressful. And so I needed like an outlet that wasn't work. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to try writing some of these horror stories. I was a freelance writer anyway, still am not freelance anymore, but still, write professionally. So it's not massively out of my remit area. And so I wrote a couple of stories and posted them on NoSleep, not expecting any traction whatsoever. But I'm also one of these people that I struggle doing things just for doing things sake. Do you get where I'm coming from with that? I'm sure it's kind of similar to this, actually, because obviously we could just have a conversation, but better to film it and put it on the internet just for, you know, like for posterity's sake, or I don't know, you know, you're the same as me. We do things for a reason. But so, and then they started getting, you know, actually a lot more interest than I realized, you know, than I anticipated. And then it was when I started doing stories that backlinked to other stories, right? So because
creating a bit of lore, a bit of world building.
Because I started doing it because I did it for companies, like, but on their websites. So I backlinked to other pages on their website. So I was like, I'm going to deliberately write stories that let me backlink to other stories I've written. So it started as like minor little side characters and stuff like that. And then before long, I started getting comments, people saying, oh, I read that story that he linked to. So this is this guy, and that's kind of cool. And so then I started doing it more and more. And that's when I managed to get like a collection published, because the Vlogs, my publisher, were like, oh yeah, people love it. Like, you know, so we're going to, that whole like shared, like it's a hot ticket right now. You know what I mean? Multiverses and shared universes are a hot ticket.
It's a good way to kind of like particularly when you're dealing with this sort of like I'm guessing here because I've never done it, like, but this kind of like short story format, and like you're online, so like you're up against the whole internet. There's a lot of content going there, so if you can create something that sort of links things together, then it kind of differentiates your work in a way, and sort of gets people more excited for the next one when it's on a forum where there's always going to be more new content every day.
Exactly, that's exactly it, and that's what I think it picked up. I mean, I can't pretend that I'm some kind of massive like innovator or anything like that, because there's, you know, like, as you can imagine, I'm sure there's a fair few authors that have got similar going on, in terms of having like their own kind of, you know, like little universe that their stories take place in. You know, people obviously like mine, though, not blowing my own trumpet or nothing, but you know, they have been picked up and it's going well, so people like what I'm doing. I try and tie things together like kind of thematically as well. So there's been a meta narrative that's going on behind the stories that you only ever catch kind of glimpses of here and there. But in the second collection, the one that's due out early next year, that then kind of, there's some exclusive stories and stuff where that becomes like less at the background and more to the foreground and deals with that more directly. But I've deliberately saved that for people that actually want to buy the book, because I think, you know, if you are spending money on it, it's only fair that, you know, one, you can guarantee that they're interested in it anyway, and two, you know, if I'd spent money on something that I could also read for free on the internet, I'd want like a little bit of extra as, you know, just as compensation, I guess, for lack of a better term, just as a thank you for
but like so something that's like, you know, a bit special, like that's like just purely for the fans that are willing to invest.
Exactly, man. And also as well, it's because it started not as intentionally necessarily going into a narrative. There's certain characters that I realized had cropped up in like 6 stories or something like that, and it's like, right, I have to write something about this person now, because even though they're in the background, they've been in the background for like 6 fucked up things, because it's horror, so they're going to be a certain kind of way by some point. But like, so that's, you know, like I said, first book's out already. Second book is out early next year, and I'm writing the third, and there's a novel on the way as well.
Jeez.
Yeah. Like, and this year was a quiet year as well in terms of that, just because I was getting set up in my current job. So that was, you know, fiction had to take a bit of a back burner, but now that's back in a big way. Which is good, because horror, man, is going in. I don't know if you've noticed, but it feels like horror has definitely come into its own since the pandemic.
It really is, man. Like flipping, what should we call it? Like, I'm more on the film end of it, like, rather than the sort of literature end of it. But it's one of the greatest years for horror releases ever.
In it, I mean, this is the thing. I'm probably going to get slaughtered for saying this as an author, but I'm not massively well read when it comes to horror. I watch so many movies, but in terms of reading, I read a fair few short story collections. That's why I wrote like that. But like, I can't sit there and pretend that like, I've read Dean Koontz and I've read other horror author. See, this is what I mean. Like, all I can think is Stephen King, and the voice in my head is saying, "Don't say Stephen King on the internet. Don't say Stephen King." Like, is the first thing. But that's I read a lot of Stephen King. I can't front about that. Like, but
a lot of people do, man.
Yeah, in it. But like, I don't know. Like, I feel bad about that because other authors, kind of in the general like book Twitter sphere,
Yeah,
you know, they all talk about how well read they are, and I'm sitting here like, yeah, I get inspired by movies a lot more than I do like books when it comes to my stuff, you know, when it comes to my literature writing. Like that's so like Terrifier 2, Jesus Christ, the amount of ideas for like stories that came off the back of that, not even about clowns, but it's like that was freaky. So how can I take that one moment and span that out? Like the scene with the water. Are you kidding me? I have sat there and thought about that genuinely as I'm going to sleep for like an hour about what makes just the clown drinking the water in someone's house so scary, and how I can take that feeling and put it in a short story. Like, I mean, what's been the best one you've seen? What's been the best film of the year for you, horror film wise?
It's kind of like horror adjacent, but I'd say my favorite film overall the year is one called Next Exit, and which has been released in America. It hasn't got distribution over here of that. That's a very good film with Rahul Kohli, who's who does a lot of stuff with Mike Flanagan and that. It's directed by Mary Elfman, who's Danny Elfman's daughter, I think.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
That's cool. I'm glad the Elfman family's becoming a legacy.
And like I think I'd have gone in with different expectations, because I'd be like, oh, a bit of a nepotism high here there, but it's an incredible piece of work. But for a straight up horror, another one, like, I don't think it's got distribution anywhere yet, because I've been hitting a few of the festivals this year. One called Candyland,
right?
Which is Candyland. It sort of refers to like a truck stop, like / motel / service station, where there's various sex workers operating. And at some point, a woman who escapes from a cult turns up on their doorstep with nowhere to go. And things go sideways. Like I think that was on at Fright Fest, but I missed it at Fright Fest, and everyone was gassing it. And I was at Grimfest with Boski a few weeks after that, so I caught it there. And it's an incredible piece of work. So grimy, like it's like a real grindhouse level of violence and sleaziness, but at the same time, like all the characters they've written in it, like all the sort of the group of sex workers that it sort of revolves around, and like I think one of the Baldwins is in it. Not Alec, he's off shooting people, but like all the characters are really well written. And,
I can tell you're not monetized. Sorry,
this is why I don't want the monetization police on me, like, because I really keep saying things like this.
I mean, you've got like I write for Screenrant for a little. Like, I work for Screenrant, right? As you know, like, so obviously in work, like, any talk about Baldwin and Rust is so, like, you know, the way we have to approach it and discuss it is so like specific, and as it should be as well. But outside of work, I've got like quite a crude sense of humor. I'm just not used to hearing it from other people and outside my own head. Like, you know, that's like an intrusive thought joke. Jesus. But no,
this is it, like Screenrant, who you write for, you know, that it's a very, very well regarded like site. You know, it's a lot of industry people checking on that, you know. So, like, you're a lot more at risk of Alec Baldwin clicking onto it than I am.
Absolutely, man. Like, and I mean, you know, there is like, people trash Screenrant a lot, I see online, and like they trash the whole like media industry around movies, man. But I read all these websites and have done for years, and there's a reason that people pick them out and do read them. But yeah, you have to be like so careful, like, you know, as you can imagine. Of course, it's the same even if you're writing for your local paper, but you know, you have to, until all the facts are there, and until everything's, you know, definitely can't be making jokes about it. That's like a definite, man. Like, I tell you what, if someone cracked a Rust joke like in an article, like, or even probably on Twitter, I imagine that would just be like straight up, you're gone, bye. Well, probably not that quickly. But you get where I'm coming from, though. Like, you know, definitely not something I'm used to hearing at all.
Yeah, with
Not
great
since
internet reach comes great responsibility.
This is just it. But yeah, I mean, speaking of though, like of that whole kind of thing. This is what I mean. This is with the films and stuff. Like, I'm a massive film nerd and have been for years. I need to hit some of these festivals. That's the next step in life in general. I'm too old for music festivals, but I miss going to places for an extended period of time. And I think film festivals are definitely the way to go, especially for horror. At the moment, like some of the movies that I've seen, I'm like, oh yeah, let's look into this. And it's like, yeah, debuted at this festival, picked up by this person, debuted by this, you know, etc., etc.
Yeah, and there's ones that like slip through the net and all. Like, there's ones that like don't turn up for ages or don't get distribution in a certain country or like this. I didn't realize that like film festivals is like something like it's been happening in the last like 12 months for me. Well, I suppose like with the virtual film festivals that were going on over COVID, shout out Mitch at Soho Horror Festival, who ran a lot of those type of events. I kind of got into it. And when they did their first physical one back, I was battling on Don't Flop the night before. And I ended up kipping on Zach's couch after like a big disaster that I won't go into on here. And I turned up there the next day and like caught what should we call it, a German film there called Arboretum, Arbitorium or something that I wouldn't have caught otherwise. And after that I said, yeah, 2022 I'm going to make it to a few festivals. So I've so I got to Fright Fest and Grimfest, and I got a ticket for Boski and that one and all, so that was pretty decent.
Well, they're the kind of thing that, and they've never really been on before the pandemic. They were never even really on my radar. They weren't something that was like even broadcast in my social media vicinity, you know. And then I think it's interesting you mentioned the virtual festivals. I think that's kind of where, I don't know, like my algorithm, I guess, was, you know, and people I knew as well started then following that maybe into like live action things, like you did, live action in person. Fuck me, in person events, not live action events, like, you know. But like I've heard a lot of chatter of people talking about some of these movies that have been on them in the last year, you know, in horror generally. And so next year I want to be at the forefront of that. I don't want to be waiting and being like one of the last people to find out about things like Terrifier 2, for example.
Yeah.
Like,
well, what an absolute juggernaut of a story, like, you know.
Mate, I could talk about that movie. Oh fuck, I love it so much. Like, it blew me away. I was not expecting it. Was because it was so unexpected. You know, for someone that like has spent the last better part of a year having everything spoiled for me and kind of knowing the, you know, like a release calendar, and so everything's kind of tied into the big Marvel movies, and, you know, as you can imagine, and Star Wars, which I love the MCU and Star Wars. We're not going to get into that debate with the MCU because I know your thoughts on it, but Terrified 2.
Well, we can talk about the movies, man. It's just like flipping. I do tend to rant about like this is taking up too many screens. And
I think that is a valid point. Like, you know, the kind of joke, you know, a kind of jokey Twitter like banter aside, I think that is a valid observation, because I checked after you said that. The first thing I did was went and checked my Cineworld and was like, well, you know, how much is it? And it's like, we've not got many screens, so there were 5 films on, but when you consider that we've got the capacity to show probably 9 or 10. Like if every film had like a different screen, like you then start thinking, oh, okay, I kind of see where it's coming from.
And it is money talks, like, you know, ultimately, like, those things are going to make money, but it's like the film festivals, like, kind of like, because, like, you know, as a horror fan, like, you know, I'm used to like just seeing things that go on to be my favorite films on home media for the first time. Or like going straight to streaming. This is something I'm like familiar with. But like when it was kind of repositioned me, and I'm like in flipping like Leicester Square watching the new Dario Argento on the biggest fucking screen I've seen in my life. I'm like, wow, I just want I like, even like the grubbiest indie film, like there's something about seeing it on a screen, like.
Oh yeah, man, for real. I genuinely think the problem, as much as anything else, is there's not enough independent cinemas in the UK generally. Because in America, there
Yeah.
are, in a lot of countries, independent cinemas are much more common. You've had Adam Mosprob on the show before, right?
Yeah.
When I went to see him, and we went to one of his like local independent cinemas to watch, ironically, to watch Lightyear is what we saw,
Yeah.
because it had just come out, because, you know, big Disney thing. But like the experience was just like really, really different and really nice. But the problem is that because they're all tied into one big company, and
Yeah.
cinemas aren't a viable enough business model, like type, I think, to keep afloat as big companies in, you know, in the UK, if that makes sense. I think if you're running them locally with just like a few screens, they're actually probably more profitable, you know, just keeping everything contained, and, you know, where you're trying to make enough money to keep the lights on, run a good service, and pay everybody, rather than appease shareholders and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. If we have more independent cinemas, I do think there'd be more variety. Like, you know, there should be horror cinemas. It's enough of a genre that, like, because I'd go, if there was one in my town, I'd go to a horror movie every Saturday night at the cinema.
This is it, like, but we like since COVID, like we have done all right for like horror cinema releases, because the thing is with horror, flipping, it's more niche, but the people who are into it will go to the cinema to watch it. So we're getting the cinema releases. We've been seeing original IPs like Smile and things like that being very successful. We got and if there's a new franchise entry, a new Scream, a new Saw, a new Halloween, people will watch it, like. But
there's
they
always
tend
waves of teenagers as well. That's the other thing with horror, man. Like, as soon as I turned 15, one of the first things I did, like, obviously legally, as soon as I turned 15, wink, but like, you know, sneaking into the cinema to see like you know, The Ring and stuff like that, was like, because it was a rite of passage, and it still is, I think. So there's always that market for it. But yeah, you're right, man. Like, one thing I have noticed though this year that's interesting is how the non-franchise stuff is doing better than the big names.
Yeah. I mean, like the franchise stuff is doing really well, like, but I mean, it was for a very long time, it was considered you don't put big distribution behind original IP horror, like. I think the thing that changed that really was probably Jordan Peele's Get Out.
Yeah, I was literally thinking that was what was my point was going to be, was Jordan Peele. I mean, because this is the thing with Peele as well. Like, he's like a brand now in himself, if that makes sense. Like, a Peele horror movie, you know, is becoming like the new M. Night Shyamalan like thing, but good, not associated with like bad twists or whatever. You know,
and
no
if
disrespect.
he's involved in like in the most minor way with like the executive production of something, it'll have his name on in big letters, like.
A movie once sneezed at by Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to the point, and this is how you know someone's doing well, right? Is that I'm starting to see a lot of like articles and videos like why Jordan Peele needs to go away, like, you know, why Jordan Peele is killing horror and stuff like that.
And like it's like it's all since like Nope, which was very well received. And the media's like the sort of online media's got to get its clicks. So he's released 3 horror films that have all been really, really well received. Admittedly, like Get Out had that kind of breakthrough impact, which the other ones haven't had to the same degree, because after Get
they're
Out,
all so solid though. I mean, this is like, I'm a Jordan Peele fan, like, so you know.
So he's had 3 good films,
and
then shortly afterwards the hate starts, because the hate has to exist.
And that's how you know that someone's made it though, because it wasn't there after Get Out too. Like, obviously there was the obvious internet troll subculture.
Yeah.
You know, and there's obviously
that's a lot more niche than people realize, like.
Yeah, it is. And this is what, not like page, like what is it, the Quartering, for example. Like I know of a couple of the pages. Like you look at his YouTube thing, and it's like I use him as an example of wider, like the wider phenomenon. But the example I always use was they ran a big piece about how in a Superman comic they'd had to pull it because Superman was LGBT, and they were like, yeah, it sold no copies. And the guy that wrote it like retweeted this and was like, that's because the figures haven't gone out for that month yet. And that was literally what it was. He'd gone, how many copies it sold? 0. And it's like, yeah, that's because the figures haven't updated and it sold loads. And that's the same on every little thing. However, now I've noticed that Jordan Peele is getting more than that tiny little clique of angry, internet nerds. Like people go, oh yeah, look, this video has 100,000 views, and it's like, yeah, but that's in the whole world, so that's nothing. Like that's a sorry, I could ramble all day about how annoyed those kinds of people make me, but yeah, point being, you can tell that Jordan Peele has become like a brand in his own right now, because there's like actual press coverage, and it's become a take to be like, Jordan Peele is killing horror needs to move on from Jordan Peele, is hurting the genre, that kind of thing.
And like this kind of ties into like the previous episode I did with Ariel from Ghouls magazine. Flipping shout out as always, big up Ghouls magazine, check that out. Flipping I believe their podcast, which was behind a paywall, is now free on Spotify, so you can check out Ghouls magazine, big supporter of them over here. But we were talking about the early 2000s torture porn movement, like your Saws and your Hostels and all this, and when that was kind of popping, and we were talking about like why some things get hate and some people don't, and like my theory is that like once you become the guy and you become the public figure, and like your presence as a public figure is almost like bigger than your movies, then people have a face to hate. So which is why like you'll see more hate directed to like your Rob Zombies and your Eli Roths, because you know who they are behind the camera. It's why like Quentin Tarantino gets more stick for his foot fetish than like some directors that are actual predators.
It's
like once you ascend to become that public figure, then you become the figure of hate. It's like I call it the Martin Shkreli effect. The pharmaceutical industry is obviously just evil in general, just like buying patents, raise the prices, make profit, and like that's just an evil industry. But it wasn't until there was one guy who was like a public figure and people knew what he looked like, and he looked a bit of a prick, then suddenly they had someone to point at and hate. It's what Al Pacino says in Scarface. You need guys like me so you can point your finger and say that's the bad guy.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, it's actually, it's a bit like Carl Rittenhouse as well. Actually, like he was another one. Like I mean, like
that's kind of the opposite, really.
Or Kanye West actually now as well. Like he's another one where it's got to the point that people are acting like the problem lives or dies on what happens with this one individual. Like they become.
It's not. They're just a face that represents something.
Exactly. Like so people are like, oh yeah, if Kanye West is banned, people are acting like if Kanye West is banned from Twitter again, then anti-Semitism will go away. And it's like that. No, like granted, I don't like or agree with anything that Kanye West says. He's just one really famous anti-Semite, but there are like fucking loads out there. That Rittenhouse kid was just he was one violent person at a protest who killed someone, but there was loads of them out there. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to get sidetracked on like the politics side of it, but like Jordan
that's
Peele.
the thing. Well, once you become the guy for something, then you catch all the hate for that movement, and like it goes the opposite way. Whereas like Jordan Peele hasn't really done anything bad ever, and all his work is pretty banging.
Yeah, but he gets so much
because he's
now.
the face of something that a group of people don't like. He's now catching all the hate, and like the people who are directed, and like as soon as you get that movement of hate towards one person, then you get the clickbait reactions because then people will click on a Jordan Peele hate article, a Jordan Peele hate video.
Yeah. I see some of the things that I see get pinned on him as well, man. Like, you know, like Jordan Peele is the reason of this, that, and the other in cinema, and blah blah blah. Like, because obviously, because he's you know been from what I'm not going to be honest. I never watched Key and Peele that much, but I know he's always been quite an outspoken person, like Jordan Peele. So like, and obviously as well because he's American, there's unfortunately,
shutting this door. Keep talking, lad.
Yeah, unfortunately, because he is in America, and because of like fucking culture war and stupid shit like that, I think there is a racial element with it. With called Jordan Peele as well, right? You know, which I hate it. I'm sure you can tell I hate it. It makes me uncomfortable talking about it because it's also, you know, it's like we have race issues in this country, but they have I think a different dynamic. So it's something that like we don't understand as well. Like, but I definitely notice it online with Jordan Peele, man. And like, you know, I see him getting blamed for like, he's one of these people that gets wokeness in Hollywood pinned on him like all the time.
Yeah.
He gets in horror. Like this is what I'm trying to say. I've just made my point. Sorry, I've been trying to get a roundabout way to say it. He's basically become the linchpin around the culture war argument in the horror subgenre, in the horror genre. I've noticed.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
So every time someone has a problem with something that they consider too woke to be horror,
yes, it's Jordan Peele's fault. It's Jordan Peele's fault. Like,
because he's the guy for that.
Yeah, like it drives me absolutely
nuts.
He
isn't even like out here making like particularly woke films. They've just got black people in.
I know. This is it. This is the irony. This is the not the irony. I think that's the wrong word, but this is the whole thing about it. Like it's not even like, you know, there is a political subtext to a lot of his movie.
He's not making preachy content.
No, not in the slightest. And I mean, that's why it's so successful though, and that's why it's so effective as well, because it does get you thinking, and it gets you thinking because it's like, you know, not so in your face, and because that's why it's good, because it's subtle. But you wouldn't think that, man. Like, you wouldn't think that looking at some of the toxicity that's grown around his name.
The thing is, like, is that flipping like horror films that are made that are just like too drenched in their flipping social message, like to be any good, like. But Jordan Peele's not the one making them.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And there's definitely been films that have been good, that have tried to be like do too much, what should we call it, with a social message to function in an entertaining way. I mean, obviously,
100%, man.
Like all the way back to like George Romero and like things like that. There's always been these like social commentary in horror, and it's always been great because the people who were doing it were good at what they were doing. And then you get the Wrong Turn reboot.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Wrong Turn reboot?
I know of it by reputation, and that's partly why I've not watched it, because Wrong Turn's one of those, you know, I'm 32, so Wrong Turn was right at the era when I was watching scary movies and for the first time and you know, getting properly hooked. So it's one of those, it's on my list of things that I need to catch up on, but like I've not heard good things.
Like, I love the franchise, and like I've kind of like I own the film on Blu-ray because I didn't want to like own all the Wrong Turn films except one. There's one bit at the there's one bit at the start where a guy's like just finished like fucking his girlfriend or whatever, and he's like talking to her in bed, and he just goes, "I just really want to use my graduate degree to do something about climate change," and and it's fucking, it's like it's like politics on its sleeve so much that it's humorously distracting, like. And like, it took me ages to figure out what they were doing with the film, and eventually I realized what they were doing is they were like, it's beat for beat the plot of one of the old Italian cannibal films, but they tried to make it with scary white people instead. And in America, and like, what's the scariest, what should we call it, kind of white people they could come up with? You can't do hillbillies anymore because that's classist. No, it's like semi-rural, first-generation European immigrants who've still got the accent and have libertarian attitudes towards small government locally.
I've noticed the amount of Eastern Europeans cropping up in American movies recently as like random bad guys. This is a trend. It's interesting you say that because this is a trend that like I noticed, and like like you said, like the sort of this like the moving away from like the deliverance types, like as the kind of antagonists. It's
I think like what should we call it? Sort of whites with Eastern European accents are the last other that you can like just designate as an other.
It's interesting actually as well because like talking earlier about how the difference between like dynamics in the UK and the US. I think that's something that we're much more sensitive to in the UK because obviously we're in Europe, and here like like one of the biggest racial groups like Polish people and then Romanian people and stuff like that. So like racial tensions between Eastern Europeans and it's much more at the forefront for us than it is in the States.
Same time, at the same time, like if you're from any kind of working class community, you've got a lot of Polish mates. You got Lithuanian mates.
But then this is what I mean though. Like so we like you're much more likely to know Eastern European people if you're British, right? Whereas in America, Eastern European ethnic group, like just as an ethnic group, is just one among many. And like you said, so from an American perspective, they're an acceptable other, whereas in our output there are less acceptable other. Because obviously there are still British things that are like, that's a bit like stereotypical going to the vampire village.
I mean, like if you made like what should we call it, like a serious British thriller where you cast a flipping like general Eastern Europeans, as just like animalistic bad guys, that would stick out as unpleasant.
Like Hostel does. Hostel's the example that always sticks out to me watching it now, because you watch Hostel and it's like you could tell that they've done pretty much no research into the region of the world where it's set at all. Like, and you've got people that are just from like anywhere probably like east of Germany, like, you know what I mean?
I think like that's like sort of like one thing where it gets where it sticks out to me is that they're just like miscellaneous Eastern European. It's just an accent and they never say where they're from, because that's how you get around it. Like, oh, they could be Russian, oh, they could be Polish, oh, they could be Lithuanian, they could be anything. Like
fictional Eastern European nation. Like people.
And it's like I'm seeing a lot of that stereotyping lately.
Likewise, man. And like I said, I think it's I just notice it more from like American output, like not even just in horror in general. Like that. So I was watching catching up with some of the new seasons of Family Guy, because I haven't watched it in years, but it's on Disney Plus. I thought, I'll catch up with Family Guy. And there was a couple of jokes in there that the wife and I turned to each other and were like, you couldn't make that joke in the UK. Absolutely not. If you're a UK comedy. Like there's one with a taxi driver that just keeps going around, I told you, it's the Turks, I blame the Turks. And then he makes some kind of like, noise. And it's like, we've actually got a significantly larger percentage of the total populace of the UK is Turkish compared to the grand total populace of the US. Absolutely would not fly in this country whatsoever. Like, totally different dynamics. So I think we're definitely more sensitive to it over here. To that kind of thing.
I do feel there's a bit of like the last remaining other. Like for a long time it was hillbillies and rednecks. But like so during the Trump era, it became like apparent that like people were using like people would sort of conflate everything they hated about like people were stereotyping like people from poorer working class communities as the people who were voting for Trump. Which has some degree of something, but like and like I think people were being like a real prick about it on Twitter. Like,
man.
Someone had like post like a fucking like a dilapidated shack with a Trump flag outside of it and say, look what these people are like. and it became a real finger pointing thing.
The basket of deplorables comment by Hillary Clinton, like, you know, they're all a basket of deplorables. And, you know, when the real question is, you know, if people in like communities like that are more attracted to Donald Trump's politics, then the next question is why? You know, like, you need to say, like, well, what's wrong in these communities that someone who's so obviously a snake oil salesman as this man is so easily able to, you know, because it's a question where answers start coming up, like, you know, really quickly. But I completely agree, like, the way it was.
Yeah, and like,
at
what's
the time.
called, the obvious things. But, you know, like, you've kind of got to look at the fact that they've had like a million guys who are like the complete opposite of Trump, that are like, you know, like all sort of like well behaved and proper, and like, you know, like careful with their use of language. They've had that all their lives, and their lives have not got better. Like,
yeah, well, not even just their lives, for generations by this point.
yeah,
You know, because a lot of these communities that have really gone downhill. I mean, this is the poverty in the US is like, people don't realize how bad it actually is in some areas. I think that's the first thing that needs to be discussed, is when you're talking about these communities that voted overwhelmingly for Trump, a lot of the time people are just imagining, like, you know, at worst trailer parks, and it's like, nah, you don't even know the half of it. Like, you need to look into some of these, like particularly in the rural areas. It's just absolutely
and like
shocking.
the rural areas are like, you know, well, like they'll point like a sort of like middle class sort of centre left people will point to working class areas as being like where the racism comes from. And like, probably in those communities, like, you know, it's not really like that, you know, like flipping, like, you know, a lot more racism is down to like representation in the media. It's to do with corporate structures. It's to do with all this kind of thing.
It's the other thing I noticed as well was and like earlier we mentioned, like, you know, the small but vocal minority out there, like, you know, this like kind of troll subculture.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that really wound me up, you know, during that whole era from like the more left liberal side of things, was how people would take the views of these online trolls and then conflate them onto the community, when a lot of the people in the community aren't even sitting there thinking about racial politics all day, every day. You know, they don't really have an opinion on homosexuality unless you ask them, etc., etc. They just know that this man on the telly promised to protect their jobs, and so they're going to vote for him. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just a whole mess of issues. We've gone mad off topic. This is
I'm rolling with it. This is what we do on the KSC.
Yeah.
Like.
It's interesting, man, but I think it does, you know, sort of like trying to segue it back to like the, you know, movie side of it a lot. I think it does kind of, it ties into a lot of the themes and issues that have gone on in like modern horror movies and stuff recently, and you know, how we are seeing that shift away from that, because thankfully people have, you know, realized that actually maybe it's not okay to make, you know, Deliverance the bad guy all the time. Like, but you know, I think we need to. Another one I've noticed though, actually, is the amount of times that the suburbia is now being used as a trope, like a villain trope, like Karens and stuff like that. That's
there was a horror film called Karen, wasn't there?
Yeah, like, but even like the new Resident Evil series on Netflix, which was crap, but it, you know, I'm saying that now for the record, not a fan. But I noticed straight away they did it with the pristine neighborhoods, like, you know, at the start, where like all the white buildings, like, oh, isn't clean society so scary? So that's one I've noticed. With that film Run as well, that was another one. Like, you know,
I haven't seen that,
mate. Oh, you got to watch that. It's good. Obviously, it's good. I'm saying you got to watch it, but yeah, that's one that you know, definitely puts the Karen type at the sort of center as like the new kind of antagonist there. And it's her name escapes me, and this is going to really annoy me, from American Horror Story. I'm typing it in now because I usually know this off the top of my head. So American Horror Story actress, what's she called? Sarah Paulson. Thank you, Sarah Paulson. Right, so she plays in Run, and I'm just double checking it is her now. Yep, it is her. Good. There we go. I had one of those real brain fart moments where it's like, right, I'm supposed to know this because I was, you know, I watched it the other day. But yeah, so she's got her daughter, like kind of like a Munchausen syndrome plot
Yeah.
like going on. Like, don't want to spoil the movie too much for anyone that's not seen it, but it's kind of obvious from the start that's what's going on. But like, mate, and it's got one of them endings as well. It's like definitely you sit there like, oh, that's pretty cold, but in a satisfying way. Like, you know. But that definitely kind of is one of several that I've seen that have come out that are kind of looking at like the middle class more as like the villain, like, and problems in middle class society rather than, you know, working classism, which I find refreshing, having grown up in a kind of like, you know, I grew up in like a lower middle class household. Like, my parents were nurses, so we weren't like working class by any means, but we weren't like middle class either. But definitely things like that are much closer to what I know than Deliverance, you know. So it's actually like, you know, it's much more relatable, I think. So I'm glad, you know,
and like it's sort of like with a lot of those kind of things, you're dealing with the protagonists will also be from a similar background. Like, you're not pitting class against class or race against race.
Yeah. Like, because this was actually that's a point as well, because this was always the problem with, and this is the problem with the movies that still use like you know, so Eastern European, say, like there's always this sense of like a stranger in a strange land kind of dynamic, you know. And so Deliverance, I think, is definitely one of the worst for it. It's a good movie, I'm not knocking it, and obviously it's a product of its time as well, but it's everyone, you know, well, majority of people know it or at least understand the premise. But so it's just like a bunch of middle-class white guys going down the river. The Hills Have Eyes is another one as well. You know what I mean? Like, obviously that's an extreme example because they're in a radiation zone, but the parallels are there.
I think like what some of the exploitation stuff gets wrong, that ironically, like say the Italian cannibal movies got right. I mean, we shouldn't be making any more Italian cannibal movies. They're the most despicable genre known to man. But like with them, it would always turn out that like right at the end, that like whilst like all these horrible things happened in this like weird jungle where these like indigenous people lived, ultimately fucking the Americans that went in there like sort of were fucking around where they don't belong. And like, you know, that's always like I think back to like westerns in some ways, like how I never really liked the John Wayne westerns, but like the spaghetti westerns got it popping. I was talking with Tony D about this because like the sort of John Wayne era, like when all the westerns were made by American studios, it'd be like the whiter than white burly hero, and like the enemies would be the indigenous people, the Native Americans. And like when you get the Italians coming in that are making the movies with Clint Eastwood and like Sergio Leone and that, then they're not like trying to like have the all stars and stripes what we call it American hero, and you get the anti-hero, and you get in a like Clint Eastwood, and you get and you get the corruption, and you get the like corrupt town officials and that, and like that's when you see that like these people aren't all like, you know, just the good guys in the white hats.
No, they're yeah. No, yes.
That's what you need, and that's like why those are the westerns that I can get on with, because there's nuance there.
Yeah, it's not like completely cut and dry, black and white, manifest destiny, American dream, like, you know, Yankee yeehaw. Where no, I completely agree. And I think that nuance is important.
And like that's where the Wrong 2 reboot got it wrong,
because it was
because they copped out. They never did the thing where they said like, okay, these terrible things happened, but those people really shouldn't have been there. Shouldn't have been like trying to fuck with a way of life that they don't understand.
Yeah, this is just it, man. Like, you know, this is something that like it's almost like the opposite of like white savior movies, you know, in action. Like you get you know, you had for ages the white savior movies where you'd have like, you know, the yeehaw, like going down into like the American soldier going down into like a, you know, like some desert somewhere or some jungle and like, you know, going through and massacring like a whole bunch of Viet Cong or a whole bunch of Taliban, you know, and then saving the kids who were, you know, and blah, blah, blah. It's almost like the opposite of that. And it's one of those things that it is very othering and divisive, etc., etc. But it's also, I think, tired of it on a subconscious level. And like, kind of like a lot of the newer stuff I found much more interesting when it's kind of more holding up a lens to what I know. Like this is partly why I like Get Out though, because Get Out was like not watching my society, but watching the society that my society is adjacent to from the perspective of Dan Couglier's character, you know, because I'm not that rich. I'm not related to anyone that's that rich, but I know people who have got relatives that have married that rich. And I've been to those weddings and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Granted, as you know, I don't know if you've ever been to a rich wedding or not, but you know, if you have, I'm sure you're the same as me, is it'll be you and your mum and your dad in the corner, like, Christ, look at those fucking chandeliers. Like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So I definitely find that much more interesting than like the remakes of like the Italian cannibal movie, you know, they ever did. Like I've not seen the new Green Inferno, for example, or any of that kind of stuff.
That's not bad, but I think I do think the Green Inferno's all right, but I also think like the cannibal genre, fur coat argument, you know, you can appreciate a fur coat looks good and an old you know, old family heirloom fur coat, rocket, but we probably shouldn't be killing any more chinchillas.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
I mean?
Exactly.
You can admire what's good about it without making a new one.
And also there's kind of the moral, not moral argument, there's kind of like the narrative argument that like with you know, especially with those kind of movies where it's like going to like a tribal setting, there's also kind of the argument that because in these days, like we've come along ethically and we understand that you need to just leave those communities the fuck alone. Like, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, you need to leave and be. It's hard to sympathize with characters that ignore that and go there. Like it was like when, do you remember a couple of years ago when that Christian preacher, like
I was just thinking of the exact same thing.
You know, and everyone,
it was the one island where like he just had to like go there.
You know, and like
he was just like everyone was saying, just don't go there.
Yeah,
they don't want to hear it. They got their own life over there. They do things in their own ways, and it's cool. And it doesn't affect anyone outside of it. You don't need to be in there, going there.
And he went anyway. And like on the one, you know, I feel for his family, obviously, like because you know he's a husband or whatever. But by the same token, it's what happened to him, the fate that he met. If someone met the same fate just in a town for no reason, you'd be like, what the fuck? It's horrible. Why did that happen to that person? But with him, it's like, no, you fucked around and found out. Like, and the same goes for in movies. You know, like nowadays.
You know, that wasn't even the first time he tried to go to that one island and all.
Was it not?
No, he tried once and got. That was his second attempt.
So
he knew what was there and got off like the first time.
So like,
thought he should go back because they didn't kill him.
I mean, it's for the same reason, actually. Like, you'd have to really seriously remake Hostel. If you were to remake Hostel in this age, you'd have to rejig the plot because by this point, it's like, yeah, you were invited to like a shady party or whatever.
Yeah.
In like an area that you know is dangerous and has tour guides.
Because have you ever seen Hostel 3?
Possibly. I watched them around the time they came out when I was just binge watching horror movies. Which one is Hostel 3? Is that the one where they're at like the house party in America, like at the warehouse?
Yeah,
party?
the one that's in Vegas.
I've seen that one. Yeah,
which tallies up? Like, you know, if that the kind of the elite hunting crew, elite hunting club existed, they would also exist in Las Vegas. But it just doesn't work.
Exactly, and I mean, part of the reason it doesn't work is because you can't really sympathize with the characters because it's like, well, you put yourself in a situation that I would never put myself in. So
that was one that, like, straight after I recorded the episode with Harry, flipping like I watched Hostel 2 back, and Hostel 2 is the one with the girls. Like, I think it's the better film, and like there's And like, there's a bit in that where it like kind of shows you a bit more of how the elite hunting club works. Because in the first one, they just kind of wander into it, and oh shit, fucking, we're getting our Achilles tendons torn out and all this, and you don't really know how it works. They show you a bit more how it works in Hostel 2, and it shows you like the international flipping bidding thing, like that's going on. And like one thing I picked up on this time was like, I noticed like flipping like, because I like in my head the elite hunting club, where they like, you know, they bid for these tourists that they go and like torture and kill. That was like some like Epstein shit, some like fucking like super billionaire elite shit. And like you look at the bidding sequence in that, and they're like putting up like 30 grand. I'm like, fucking, that's a deposit on a pretty good house, but like in a small place, you're not getting that in like London or something like fucking like that's an amount of money that like a lot of people I know are like perfectly capable of raising. It's like that's like that just changed the whole way I look at this. Like I know we got inflation and that, but I'm like, hang on, that's actually like it's kind of doable.
Well,
if I just like really committed myself to do it. Like I really wanted to do that. I could get there in a couple of years.
If it was like 30 grand.
I know people that have lost more than that on Dogecoin.
This is what I was literally about to say, man. If it was like 30 grand, everyone would know someone that had done it. Like it would be like a dirty secret. Like it'd be like, yeah, my boss went on one of them hostel things at the weekend. Like I'm never turning up late to work again. Like you know what I mean? Like
just.
It would be like people going to Amsterdam to the red light district. Yeah, exactly. Like there'd be you like that if that kind of thing. It just becomes a bit preposterous. Like it kind of makes it hard to have sympathy. Whereas in something like Get Out, all he did was have a girlfriend. Like that was literally the only mistake he made, and it's like, this is like, and that's what makes it a lot scarier. I had another really good example, but I've totally lost it, of a horror film that's come out recently where it's like, you know, obviously aside from like zombies and disaster things, which are a bit different, but like the genres of movies where it's people going into communities or areas that they shouldn't be and bad things happen to them, it's kind of like, well, we've come a long way now, and
it's one of those actually... like I think it's different from like getting stranded in a place which is a bad place, and like deliberately going there to tell people what's what and you should be living how you're living.
I think actually, you know what? So you know, Midsummer.
Yeah,
that's one that I think actually illustrates kind of the difference, is because that's obviously about a cult in a rural village, but because it's in Sweden or wherever it's set. Is it in Sweden? It's been ages since I've seen it. It's not. Because it's not like in the Amazon or, you know what I mean, like in the jungles of Africa, or where these exploitation movies, or even in the Appalachian Mountains, where like the exploitation horror of the past would have been set for that kind of thing. I think that really took people by surprise. And I think the reason that remains scary is because those guys in there, they didn't trespass anywhere that they weren't supposed to trespass. Their only mistake was that they went to a festival in the European countryside. Which, I mean,
and it's not like they were trapped there, and like there was escalation. There was escalation, like flipping, like your man and his what should we call it, his mates, flipping, like they had to keep making bad choices, to end up like in a burning bear. Like this is the thing, and I mean, like actions within the movie aside, I'm talking just simply about the premise. But when it's someone like, you know, if they made a horror movie about your boy who went down there to try and speak to the island in real life, I would feel no sympathy for him, because from the very start of the movie, if it was a movie, he made the mistake of going there in the first place. In something like Midsummer and something like Get Out, they put themselves in that dangerous situation where they're forced to make difficult choices through literally just existing. You know what I mean? Like just doing things like, and there's a lot more horror that seems to be like that these days, where it's like, it's moved away from people making decisions that put them in a bad situation or adventuring and it going awry to just like you've got to make a lot of bad decisions. You've got,
it's just a lot more.
There's escalation. Like Speak No Evil is a good example.
I have watched. Let me just Google that a second, because again, watch a lot of movies.
Yeah, it's
And
a
then,
Shudder original.
oh
It's
no, I've not seen. I've heard of this one, but I've not. No,
yeah,
I've definitely not seen it. It came out last year, and I've only just got Shudder. Like,
yeah.
when did this one come out? I'm gonna
It
add this
came
to the
out on
list.
Shudder, like what should we call it, in October. So you're not, but that's like quite an interesting one. Like, and like that had come out like the weekend before Grimfest. So like obviously like flipping everyone you see at a horror like film festival has Shudder and has seen the new Shudder original that everyone's talking about. And like that one's there's a lot of escalation in that. And the conversation I was having with everyone in there is like, at what point would you have just said no, fuck this, and abandoned it? At what point would you have removed yourself from the situation? Because like it's very, very small escalations throughout. It's almost like like a comedy of manners in that
Yeah,
respect.
yeah.
It's
Rather
very,
than
very
the
small
movie.
escalations, but sooner or later you've got to say fuck this. And like there's a point for that film in everyone. And like maybe it's like pretty much instantly like me when you first meet these people and they invite you to the house. Like, I'm not gonna do that. You know, so I'd be out there instantly, but there's other people go like, well, maybe I'd put up with this, and like this is like this would be like my line. But then again, you've already agreed to things, and like so it's like there's a lot of that discussion of like, where is your line? And
See,
like,
my line's right at the start. I'd be like, well, I'm just not going in the spooky house. Like, you know what I mean? I'd be one of those kids that if the ball goes in the spooky back garden, it's like, well, I've lost that ball.
Yeah.
That ball's gone then. Like,
that's the thing. That's the thing with this film. It's not a spooky house. Yeah. It's like this one like husband and wife. I've got they meet another husband and wife on holiday, and they both got a kid each. And what should we call it? I think it's one of the families Italian, and like the other family's like I think no, one family's Danish and one family's from Holland. And like they say like, oh, you'll have to come and visit us in Holland at some point. And like just like sort of spend the weekend. And that's it. It was just like meeting up with like, you know,
an ordinary thing that's like as opposed to something like The Descent, which is, hey, go down in the scary cave, where it's like, well, no, I'm not, obviously not, like, obviously not going down the scary cave. No, completely. I've got the trailer was playing there, like in the background. I've just gave it a quick Google. I'm definitely going to watch that, like possibly even later on tonight. Actually, I got a Shudder subscription, like literally this week, because I've been in the finances to do it and put on some more subscriptions, and that was the first one on my list because I had it years ago. Like years ago, I had Shudder, but the content on it then wasn't great. Whereas like now, it just looks amazing. So I was like, right, I've got to get Shudder. And then I managed to get 6 months, 99p a month, banging, bargain, mate.
Oh, so have you got the actual app, the subscription through that?
I've got it through Prime.
Oh, okay. Oh, right, fair dues.
Yeah.
So what do you call it? Because with Prime, you can't do the VPN and get the American ones. But like should have just had a run of like putting out really good originals. Speak No Evil was one of them. They like got the new Dario Argento film, and like I don't know if you're a giallo guy, but I am, and like that was a big thing for me. And like they've also got like some other films, like because they own the VHS franchise.
Yeah, well, that was what I watched actually. Funnily enough, I watched because I've seen 1 and 2, and so I caught up and I watched 94 and 99. And they were great. I watched this Taiwanese movie called The Sadness, which
yeah,
that was the description didn't mention how much sexual violence was actually in it. Like, and I watched the trailer, and I watched the start of it with my wife, right? And she's not a horror person, and the trailer and the description made it sound like kind of Smile meets Terrifier meets 28 Days Later, right? and the trailer makes it look like that. And so I'm like, oh, okay.
And then all of a sudden you've got dicks going into eye sockets. And
yeah, it was the moment on the train. We were like, oh man, that was a crazy action sequence. This is great. And we were talking about some of the prosthetics. And it's like, wait, hold on. Did that guy just undo his flies? Hold on, he's doing, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when it kind of turned, like, and there was when the guy said, oh, I'm going to finger your girlfriend, right? And he made the joke about the fingers. And we thought, oh, that was just him they just slipped a dirty joke in there. He's got a dirty neighbor, fair enough. And then the film just went in and in and in. And it turns out that it's actually that's a whole central plot point. And it was the bit with the, I don't want to spoil it in case someone's like, oh, okay, like, I don't know whether to say watch The Sadness if you've not seen it, or do watch The Sadness if you've not seen it, or don't, because I mean I have a strong stomach, but that movie was a bit much for me, man. I was a bit like, I wish I'd had a bit more warning before going in that it was that kind of movie. Like I said, I just thought it was going to be really violent. I didn't realize it would have, as you mentioned, the dicks and eyes stuff. Like that was a bit like, oh no.
Should have been killing it with because for ages they'd have original films with that they bought. And like they weren't really consistent. A lot of them were a bit shonky. But like around about October, they just started like putting out like one every week that I really liked. And like one of them's called Glorious with what's your name? Your man out of Whiplash with the moustache. J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson guy.
Why didn't you lead with J.K. Simmons, your man out of Whiplash?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, I forgot he was J. Jonah Jameson. But it's like,
this
is like quite literally a chamber piece, and it's this guy who's like apparently like had some issues with his girlfriend, and like he's like currently been kicked out. He's in his car and all this. He goes into a public toilet, and the whole film's set in this public toilet, more or less.
Right.
And there's like a glory hole with a voice coming out of it, and it's like the voice is J.K. Simmons, and it it sort of starts escalating, and like he seems to kind of know things. And he starts proclaiming to have some kind of otherworldly powers, and it gets a bit Lovecraftian, but it's all this one dude flipping like talking to a disembodied voice coming through a glory hole in a public shithouse.
I love
it's called Glorious, man. That's way up your street, man.
I'm gonna check that one out as well. See, this is partly why because like I said, I had Shudder a while ago. From the sound of things in the era that you said, where it was a bit hit and miss. I had it on the Xbox. I had the Xbox app, and I mainly got it for the Sadako versus the Grudge movie.
Oh yeah,
because that's so ridiculous, man. Like I read about it and I was like, no, I have to watch this. So I got a Shudder subscription then. But then recently, like through work as well, actually, the amount of movies that I saw come through, that it's like, oh, I've never heard of this, and it's a Shudder original, and it's a Shudder original. You know what I mean? And
they've really stepped it the fuck up, like.
Yeah, like so that was like I've got to get on the Shudder bandwagon clearly, because it's you know, if you're a horror fan, it's going on.
Yeah.
Like I've just seen that it's like 2 minutes to 10, so I'm gonna have to call it a night there, man, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's blessed, man. This has been a fucking great podcast, man. Thanks for coming on.
That's all right.
I'll have you back. I'll have you back again, because like we just had a nice conversation and like missed everything. But before we go, do you want to like drop any plugs, man?
I'm shit at stuff like that, man. I'm not very big on self promotion, and my publisher's always actually. But yeah, my book 100% Unfiltered Nightmare Fuel is on Amazon, and the second one is going to be coming out also on Amazon, and there's an audiobook on Audible as well. I'll drop you the link, and then you know that can be there somewhere. But yeah, what I was going to say is as well, man, is I will come on again. Like next time a movie comes out, what we'll do, we'll watch it, and then we'll discuss. We will chronicle the rise of Shudder. Yeah. But yeah, I do have to go because I think I can hear the wife calling me as well. But I will catch you soon, bro. You take it easy. Thanks for having me as well, man.
Doing this.
Peace.
Peace. And This has once again been the KSC, Kinell Sinister Cinema. I really enjoyed that episode. We didn't really have a plan for it, but we managed to talk a load of shit, and that's what I like doing. Love that guy. We'll definitely have him back. Maybe we'll actually manage to talk about films for most of it next time. Who knows? But yeah, as I say, don't flop. Birkenhead, 17th of December. I'm going to be Body and Gaz time. Check out the Patreon where we drop these episodes early and ad free. And yeah, peace. Safe.